Welcome to my sewing room. I'm Nancy Bronstein. I am a Viking educator, and today I'm going to show you how to use the circular attachment. I'm going to be demoing this on my Designer Epic 2, but this attachment can be used on the Topaz, the Jade, the Brilliance, the Diamond, the Ruby, the 980Q, and probably other machines that I don't recall right at the moment. So it's a handy dandy little tool. It's especially handy if you do not have an embroidery machine, although it's lots of fun to play with even if you do. Now, I'm going to show you first of all what you could do with it. Let's whet your appetite. I'm going to show you a table runner that I made with the circular attachment. So with the circular attachment, you can make these nice appliques, and then you can do circular designs with all those decorative stitches that your wonderful machine has. You can do applique, reverse applique, and then decorate it with all those stitches that I was just talking about. So it's a lot of fun to play with, and it's easy to install. Let's see if I can move the camera closer. There are these two holes that are in your stitch plate, and the circular attachment snaps right into those. Now you see it comes out quite a distance here. If you have an embroidery machine, it gives it more stability if you have the embroidery arm on. Other than that, if you have an extension table for your sewing machine, that would be helpful as well. So before we get started, I've got to thread my needle. I left that part out because this is one of my favorite features of the Epic 2, although there are many. I have it all set up so that with the push of a button, you'll see how it threads. I just love that. Now, what I'm going to show you today is how to do applique with this. So what you need is a piece of stabilizer and your backing fabric, and then your applique fabric. Then you place that under the needle area. Oh, I forgot to explain the slider. The slider sets the diameter of your circle. So up close it's going to be smaller. Move it out, it's going to be bigger. And there are centimeters and inches on a ruler on the circular attachment, so you can set the diameter that way. So I'm going to move it in just a little bit. And then what you do is you take a push pin and you place that where you want the center of your circle to be. So if I wanted it about there, I would then take the push pin over, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this on the screen, hopefully. And it's much easier if I weren't trying to film this. You just push the push pin into the slider. Then the first thing I do before I go to stitch out is make sure that my circle's not bigger than my applique fabric. So I just rotate around, pivot around, and make sure, yes, I'm just clearing that side, so I'm good to go. Now I have it set with the straight stitch because I want it to have more of a finished look. I could do any other stitch that I wanted and trim it, but then you're going to see the edge of the fabric. So you'll see what I mean as I go along. So now I'm just going to do a straight stitch, and you should take your time. Don't go too fast. And I kind of pet it lightly as I'm going along, so if there's any bubbles forming, I smooth them out before they create any issues. Pretty easy, right? Now you just want to form a full circle. And one thing that I forgot to mention about the setup that I would recommend is that before you even get started, that you put some painter's tape over your cutter. That's because the circular attachment, where it attaches into your stitch plate, because of its location, it's recommended that you don't use your automatic cutter. So I put the painter's tape over that button because I will invariably automatically hit the cutter button as soon as I'm done. Even if I've told myself a million times not to do it, I will. But the painter's tape reminds me not to hit that and to just take the design out and manually cut the threads. So now you see I have this really nice, get this on the camera. I have this really nice circle. See if I can get it back far enough so that you'll see what I'm talking about. Yes, so I have this really nice circle. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to trim very close to the edge here all the way around of just the powder blue fabric, and I'm going to be careful not to cut any of my stitches. So then I end up with something like this. Now, I can pick any decorative stitch that I want to go around. I could do a satin stitch if I wanted, but I'll show you how I go about doing that. I have to put it back into the circular attachment, and you can still see where my original, I can see where my original hole was, so I know where the center is. I put the push pin back in that hole and then place it on the slider. And it's much easier to do if I weren't trying to film this. You just stick it in there, but I'm trying to do this so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. Now, the last circle I made was a little bit bigger, so I need to push my slider in so that that center red mark is where my stitches were. And then I can pick any stitch to go around. And you'll see on this one, I took my circle that looked like this, chose a decorative stitch, and that's the end result. Isn't that nice? Now, another thing you can do with the circular attachment is if you don't like these raw edge applique circles, you can do a turned edge applique. And the way you do that is you take your fabric and underneath it you put some interfacing and then the stabilizer. Then after you stitch it, you pull off the stabilizer off the back, and you'll end up with something like this, where you have your interfacing and you have your circle with your fabric. Then what you do is you take your circle and don't cut real close to the stitching like you did with the raw edge applique. You want to leave about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch and then take little bites to ease the curve. Then you turn it over and you slice open the interfacing, and you'll end up, turn it right sides out, and you'll end up with something like this. This is before I pressed it, and I'll show you how nice it looks after it's pressed. So isn't that nice? And so you can make different size circles. Then you can put that down on your fabric, and you could do hand applique if you wanted, or there's a variety of different stitches that you could use. This is, see if I can get it on the camera, this is a straight stitch that I just went around the applique. This is a blanket stitch. Can't really see it on the camera because it's pretty small. And then I used a blind hem stitch on this one. Now I could have used a decorative stitch. I mean, I could have used any number of stitches, but this is just to kind of have the stitching recede into the background and not be a design element. So there's lots of fun things that you can do with the circular attachment. I mean, if you wanted to do a whole bunch of circles, you could take a sheet and just do one after the other, like I did here, cut them all out, and then make all your circles all at once. So it's fun to play with, and I think you would enjoy it. Try it out.